The ancient Hermetic tradition has a principle that has been sitting with me since I first came across it. As within, so without. Your external reality is a mirror of your internal state. What you carry inside your beliefs, your fears, your unconscious programming, your unexamined assumptions eventually shows up in the world around you, in your relationships, in your careers, in the systems you participate in and tolerate. Which means that if you want to change anything out there, the first audit has to happen in here. That's why I want to start today. Not with the world, but with ourselves. Welcome back to the Wei of Reckoning, and I am Wei. The show follows the flow of all things to the meanings through political, economy, ancient wisdom, and honest personal reckoning. And today, we're going deep on personal reckoning. Someone once said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." It's one of those quotes that I've heard so often it starts losing its meaning. But I want to take it seriously today because I think it contains structural truth that the Hermetic traditions, the Stoics, the Bible, the most, wise traditions all agree on when they agree on nothing else. You can't build an outer world if you haven't built the inner one first. So, the first Hermetic principle is materialism. The all is mind. The universe is mental. Everything begins in consciousness. The outer world is a reflection, not a perfect one, not an immediate one, but a structural and inevitable one of the inner world that produced it. This isn't mysticism for its own sake, it's a practical framework. And when I apply analytically, the same way I apply financial models to understand what actually happens inside an organization, it produces some very uncomfortable findings. Look at what most of us are feeding our minds right now. We're spending hours every day on social media, absorbing anxiety, comparing our ordinary, unfiltered lives against people projecting wealth and success they may or may not even have, measuring our progress against a highlight reel that was curated specifically to produce the feeling we are behind, inadequate, and really failing to keep up. That diet doesn't stay on the screen, it becomes a lens through which we see everything, our work, our relationships, our sense of what's possible for us. It produces a inner state of scarcity and inadequacy. And that inner state, per the mirror principle, produces an outer reality to match. So I've been cutting my social media use deliberately, choosing to follow accounts that promotes genuine health, real ideas, things that actually, want my mind to really spend time on. And it's a small change, but small changes, it compounds. Your consciousness compounds over time. What you consume mentally, it's like a budget decision. Most of us never really audit it. So before you change, what you're putting in, first, you have to really take an honest inventory of what's already running. Because most of us, we're running on, automatic mode. I'm not saying that, in a clinical sense, but it's like we have habitual behaviors we reach for without thinking. That really consumes our energy and attention without our full awareness or really even consent at this point. So some of these obvious, when you kind of look at them directly, many are invisible precisely because they're so deeply ingrained. Like we've stopped noticing them as choices because they're just so automatic. So I want to name mine. To be honest, mine is food. I've always eaten for pleasure my whole life. So that relationship with food has led to overeating, weight that I've carried over the years, and I'll be honest of why this particular addiction is difficult beyond the obvious. Like, I have to eat, I can't just not eat, I would die. You have to, the problem is, you have to interact with it every day, multiple times a day, which means the relationship has to be renegotiated rather than ended. If you have alcohol addiction, you can just stop drinking alcohol. So I can't do that with food. Every meal is a decision point. There's no real going, cold turkey or something, because, I need it to stay alive. But here's the thing, whatever yours is, I encourage you to sit with that question honestly, rather than moving past it quickly. There's a simple diagnostic that I've come up with to make a list of things that I'm addicted to. And that is, try to go without it for a week, whether it's social media, alcohol, drugs, anything you deem unhealthy, just don't do it for a week. So if you can do it without significant difficulty, then it's fine. I don't think you have an addiction. I think you just have a habit, but not an addiction. But if you genuinely can't, if your thoughts for 1 week feels impossible, or it just gives you anxiety and you're thinking about it every single day, that's fine, but use that as a data point. Use that as information, and understand that that one thing has more control over you than you have over it. And that's where the inner audit really begins. And make a list of this. Write it down on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard. And now you've, shed light onto, let's say, your shadow. You've shed light into something that you were originally running on automatic. And when you shed light into it, that is the first step of actually, improving and slowly fixing it, really. So, because here is what I have come to understand. You can't think clearly about complex systems, whether it's political, economic, spiritual, while you're running on this fractured attention and unconscious programming. The inner work is not a detour, but engaging with the world, it is the prerequisite for doing it effectively. So, the Hermetic principle of correspondence, as within, so without, operates at every scale simultaneously. What is true of the individual is true of the collective. A population running on anxiety, comparison, and unconscious consumption, what does that produce? It produces a political culture running on anxiety, division, and unconscious reaction. The outer chaos we observe in the world is not separate from the inner chaos most people are carrying. It is an expression of that. So what does that mean? It means the most genuinely political act available to any individual is to get their own inner state under enough examination and enough management that their participation in the outer world is conscious rather than reactive, that it's informed rather than manipulated, that it's intentional rather than automatic. And I know that is a high bar, and I'm not there yet. I am trying to, take an inventory of my own biases, of how I was raised, the culture that I was in, and even your friends and coworkers, all these things affect how you operate, and we have to really examine these biases. So, as within, so without. In the next episode, I want to really take that principle outward into the political system specifically, into how we engage with democracy, and why most of us, don't, to be honest. Like, I don't really spend that much time, doing my civic duty, but hey, what that costs us and what I think we can actually do about it. So, but I wanted to start here because I think the sequence does matter. You can't audit a system you haven't really learned to audit yourself. And you can't change the world whose real mirror you haven't really had the courage to look into. So I want to start with taking inventory. And like I said, everyone just, do 1 week, make a list of things you think you're addicted to, and see what you find. Feel free to post, in the comments of what it is, and the next time we post another episode, 1 week will have gone by, and you can really check in to see, hey, did I make it a full week? Did I not? If not, you have some additional data points that you can use, and you've really shed light into, your subconscious. So that is all I have right now. I'll see you guys in the next episode, and this is the Wei of Reckoning.